One couple's bitter battle over their frozen embryos goes to the Court of Appeals. How the verdict could shape history. Tonight, a first in Missouri. A divorced couple's bitter battle over their frozen embryos is going to the Court of Appeals. Tonight, our Fox Files investigation discovered signed contracts by couples going through in vitro fertilization are basically worthless years later. In 2007, Hasha McQueen and Justin Gadberry went through in vitro fertilization in hopes of having children. They ended up with 4 embryos, fertilized sperm and eggs. 2 were implanted in Hasha. She became pregnant with twin boys. These are pictures of the boys when they were younger. They're now 7. At the time, Hasha and Justin froze the other 2 embryos.
Now, 2007 paperwork said, in case of divorce or separation, that I would get the embryos.
In 2010, they moved the frozen embryos to a different cryo bank. Documents were signed again saying Hasha would get the embryos if the 2 divorced. The 2 did, in fact, divorce, and now Justin no longer wants additional children with Hasha.
He believes it would be detrimental to his own children, to the children he already has with her, not to mention, not in his interest, to have more children with his ex-wife with whom he does not have a good relationship.
What do you want to do with these embryos?
I'd like to give him the opportunity to develop.
Hasha sued to uphold the 2 contracts giving her the embryos. Justin's attorney argued there were issues with his signature and he didn't understand what he was signing. Bottom line, the courts ruled he had a constitutional right not to be a parent.
We created these lives, you know, and they're human lives. And we decided that we weren't going to terminate them by a written agreement. And for the courts to come in and say, well, never mind.
He didn't go into this thinking, oh, we've created 4 embryos, now we can have 4 children. They created embryos to have the possibility of having children.
The courts ruled the embryos were not minor children, but marital property and would remain in both names in storage until both could agree on what to do with them. Battles like this one and the case of Sofia Vergara and her ex-fiance's fight over their frozen embryos are becoming more common.
When people freeze embryos now, they need to understand that these are going to be around and that they got to think about, do they really want to do this?
But years later, we found if there is a divorce, the courts rarely allow embryos to be used, and only when it's a woman's last chance at having a child. Hasha argues she had a legally binding contract. Law professor Susan Appleton, who has studied these types of cases, tells me these agreements simply don't hold up.
Both parties have to consent now, and whether they consented that one or the other would use them later isn't good enough because things change between time A and time B.
Hasha is willing to sign a contract releasing her ex-husband from any financial responsibilities if she implanted the 2 remaining embryos and the pregnancy was successful, but the court won't allow that either.
Imagine a situation in which he's going to pick up his kids from her house and he picks up his 2 children, and there are 2 other children there for whom he's the biological dad, and they're the siblings of the 2 children that he has with Hasha, and he only picks up 2 of them and leaves the other 2. What kind of a crazy situation is that?
These are my wanted babies, and they belong with their mother.
And are you willing to fight to the bitter end to make that happen?
I am.
By the way, the Shure Institute allowed us to videotape inside their cryo lab, but they have nothing to do with this lawsuit. Hasha, who is an attorney, has now started an organization called Embryo Defense to help with legal battles similar to her own. And she's also working to get legislation in Missouri to force courts to uphold these contracts signed at the time of IVF. And we'll continue to follow this story and let you know what happens.
Yeah, fascinating, no doubt about it.
And we thank you for watching Fox 2 News.